Today we're focusing on the SMG category, and there's a lot of good SMGs in the mix here. I would say that there's probably only one bad SMG, but we're going to get into all that. We'll also talk about some best practices when it comes to class setups. And as you can see, I've pretty much max leveled all of these, so I have a hands-on experience with these individual weapons. But on top of that, sim.gg has also gotten some weapon stats, and some important ones to look at, especially when it comes to the SMG category, is obviously the damage profiles and stuff like that, but also to look at the muzzle velocity. This is the muzzle velocity for the Fennec. If we go ahead and switch this to the Lockman sub, it goes up. If we go ahead and go a little bit lower, there are some that have way higher bullet velocity, which we kind of saw that with the P90 back in Modern Warfare, but there's some where maybe they even have a lower, like the Mini Bach. It really struggles with bullet velocity, so at range, it's going to be a lot harder to hit a target regardless of how fast the TTK is. And just like my recent assault rifle video, I had to pull all the data from the site, plug it in, give us certain damage values. You can see all this stuff is pretty tiny. We're not going to go in depth on all these things. We're going to go to the graph and then I'll make some recommendations. But we can see right here kind of how the damage values work out. I'm going to scroll through, so in case you want to kind of pause and look at that for yourself, you can go ahead and see how each weapon performs at the various damage ranges, where we can go ahead and kind of see the headshot, neck shot, chest, stomach, limbs, the damage range at which those start those values, and then the overall rate of fire combined with the shots to kill gives us an overall average of TTK that we can expect for the individual weapon. You got to go ahead and kind of factor that into your decision making. Then once we get this graph, it gets kind of a little bit crazy because there's so much going on. Obviously, you can see what kind of performs better. The Lockman sub performs probably the best up close, and then it goes to the Vaznev 9K, and then we got the FSS Hurricane kind of in the middle, goes along here, and then we can see that the Mini Box struggles, particularly at range above 30 meters. And most of the time, on most of the maps, most of the engagements, you're going to keep things close quarters, so you kind of really got to look at 30 meters and below, and you can kind of see how that looks. You can take your screenshot, kind of look at it a little bit more closely, but you can kind of see how these perform. I combined that data along with my hands-on experience to kind of rate these individual weapons, and we'll go through that now. So to keep this a little bit simpler, since I think there was a little bit of confusion on close and far and all around when it came to the rifles, I'm just going to go ahead and keep it top tier, solid, and then not good. It's kind of hard to determine what's going to exactly be meta, because at the end of the day, we don't have access to all the attachments. We don't really have a true understanding of what individual attachments do for every, there's just way too many this early on, but this just kind of give you a good start of, hey, what should I be leveling? What feels good? And kind of how that part goes. So overall, we're going to start off with this Bell 46, which is like the MP7. Overall, I feel like this is a very solid option. I don't think it's necessarily top tier. It's a borderline, but overall it feels pretty good. And it's definitely not bad. We can go ahead and go into the MX9, which sadly, this is kind of like the worst from the bunch, I would say. And this one is definitely not good. We'll go ahead and move that over here to the not good category. And that's going to probably be the only one that is not good. We can go with the FSS Hurricane. We'll go ahead and chop that one and go ahead and put that one in the solid category. I think overall it's nice to have the extra ammo and the extra bullet velocity, but at range I just didn't feel like it hit quite as hard as it needed to, or as compared to some of the other options. We got the Lockman sub. This is one that didn't seem like it got touched from the beta, and this one is definitely top tier in the SMG category. Then we got to move to the Vaznev 9K, and overall, the thing with this one is just it hits pretty good. It feels like the AK-74U should feel. It's just really good all the way around, and that's a nice little feature there. So then we got the Mini Bach, which I would say is pretty solid because of the extended mags that you get with it by default. It's borderline not good because of that long range, but in general, up close, you're gonna be able to take on multiple people. Reload's good. All that stuff is pretty good. It just needs to work on its little bit of a bullet velocity there. PDSW was probably my favorite. Not saying it's the best, but it was my favorite to use throughout this. Iron sights were super clean, even though I put an optic on most of these things because you don't really need to put 5 attachments on them, especially for regular public matches. You kind of just have to balance that out. And then the Fennec was probably my second favorite. I felt like I was deleting people with ease. And then this ends up kind of being the list where I would have it. There's a lot of top tier options that are very solid. They compete in their own category. There's a few solid options that just are a hair worse than these for one reason or another. And then we got the MX9, which is kind of all around down bad. And the other part on the MX-9 that I didn't even touch on is you don't even get an extended mag. It goes up to 32 bullets. That's like nothing when these are mostly starting on 30 plus. So we're gonna go ahead and start off with the Vel 46, and I'll give you kind of a template that you can use pretty much for all the SMGs. First off, I go ahead and normally put on an optic. You can save an attachment by not putting one on, and there's some attachments that don't have any cons. For example, if we go to the laser here, we can skim through and you can see that this one only helps your hip fire and hip fire recoil. And then we continue down, there might be another one. Nope, that's it. And so you want to be on the lookout for those attachments that can do stuff without necessarily penalizing you. And because of this game works like Modern Warfare, there's a UAV up in the air and you fire an unsuppressed weapon, you're going to pop up on the minimap. That's just kind of how it works. Even if you have Ghost, that's how it works. So the one that I'm kind of leaning towards is this SMG MKV because it keeps you off the minimap. It helps with bullet velocity, it helps with damage range, and it helps with recoil smoothness. And obviously you get a penalty, but it works very much like a monolithic suppressor. So I would imagine that that one's going to be the one that most people lean towards. Then you can kind of go with an extended mag if you want. The 40 is pretty solid on this gun, but maybe you want 50, and then you can go ahead and go with the underbarrel, and there are underbarrels that actually have no penalty, so aiming idle stability. So even if you have the extra spare slots, I would use those because a lot of the attachments feel like they make your gun super clunky, and we can do the same thing, and some of the attachments are slightly different depending on what weapon you would use. So here we'd go to 32, the laser we can go ahead and go through, and we can go ahead and see that there's another one like that. We can go with the optic, and you can kind of just build this out, and you kind of already have a blueprint. And as we figure out kind of what quote unquote meta is, we can kind of get an idea of what's going to make the most sense as you build out the weapon. So that might be something like the overall build on the MX-9. So then you got the Lockman sub, which very much works the same. You can go ahead and equip that attachment there. You get your optic, you put on the 40 round mag, and unless you want the 50, you put on that SMG MKV attachment, and then you're kind of good there. Maybe you put on this one that doesn't hurt, and then boom, you're good to go. Or you could drop this one here and you put on no stock and you kind of just build that out that way. So there's a lot of different ways you can build this out. If you have spare attachments, try to use one of these two that are going to go ahead and fill in those. The Vaznev is a little bit different, so you got to be aware of that. There's actually a laser that speeds up your aim down sight time. I still go ahead and put on that optic. We're going to go ahead and go with the 45 round mag. We're going to put on the SMG, and then we get an extra attachment to kind of do whatever we want with. Maybe we go rear grip and we do something like for aim down sight speed, and there you go. Pretty straightforward build, and this is kind of what you would do all the way down for all of these weapons. It's pretty straightforward, at least right now, until we can min-max and really find out what is quote-unquote meta. Appreciate all the support. Thank you for watching as always. Have a great day.